everyone, so today I am doing my June and July wrap up, and July was actually a pretty good reading month. I read 9 books and I read 5 in June, so that's pretty good as well. So the first book that I read in June was an ebook, and I picked this one up because I wanted something that was a bit more light-hearted, like I wanted a contemporary. The first book that I read in June was Finding Hope by Colleen Nelson. This is about a girl who doesn't have the best home life, especially because her brother is on drugs and there's a lot of tension in her family because of this, and she has the opportunity to move to a boarding school and get away from it all. So she takes it because she really wants to just get out of there and start fresh. But she realises that it's not always possible to leave everything behind, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars and it was a really fun read. The next book I read in June was After the Quake by Haruki Murakami. This I gave 3 stars. This is a collection of short stories, and there are 6 in this book, and they all have in common the Kobe earthquake of 1995. But this is only a very vague reference. Usually it's like on the TV or something like that. A couple of them are a bit more heavily focused on it, but none of them are particularly set in Kobe itself. This was really good. I really liked the writing, except it was just a bit too weird for my taste. I gave it 3 stars, and the last one was my favourite, and that was the most normal of them all, so that's probably why I liked it. But I feel like Murakami is just a bit too odd and abstract and strange for my liking. But that's not to say this wasn't good, it just wasn't to my taste, and I would recommend if you like weird things and short stories, then this is perfect because it was really good and I did quite enjoy it, but at the same time it wasn't my favourite. The next book I read in June was Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. I gave this 4 stars. I really liked the characters, I really liked their sort of relationship and how they interacted with each other, and I loved it for that. I didn't fall in love with it as many people have because of the ending myself, but because I guessed it halfway through, and I feel like that kind of took away from the book in that it wasn't that shocking, heartbreaking ending, because I'd kind of known from about halfway that this was what was going to happen. I still gave it 4 stars because I loved the characters and how they interacted and all the things they did in the book. Like, I just really enjoyed that, but I didn't kind of get the heartbreak that a lot of people had. I didn't fall in love with it like many people have, though that's not to say that I didn't like it and it wasn't a good book, because I did like it and I gave it 4 stars. The 4th book that I read in June was The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. This took me a little while to get through because I was just reading it sort of chapter by chapter every so often, and it's not a long book, it's quite short. I really like this. Tom is such an adorable character. This was the first book that I read by Mark Twain, and I will definitely be picking up more in the future because I fell in love with his writing in this. It was so cute, so good, so thought-provoking. I originally gave this 4 stars, but when I was thinking about this earlier, I thought this was 4.5 stars. I just loved it. It was so cute, and Tom is just the nicest, most adorable character ever. Highly recommend this, and it's a children's classic, but I think it's also one of those timeless classics that anyone can read and enjoy. The final book that I read in June was A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. Now this I didn't exactly read. I read and listened along to on an audiobook. I loved this play. This is my favourite read of June, and it was just so funny. Shakespeare is just so genius. The little things that I would never have noticed a few years ago, and now I pick up on. I mean, even just a year ago I probably wouldn't have picked up on half the things that happen in this book. It's the wordplay that Shakespeare uses that makes them for me. I would highly recommend this. Along with Hamlet, this is probably one of my favourite Shakespeare plays. It's really weird, it's really abstract, and it is a comedy, and I'd highly recommend listening along to the audiobook because I found that made it a lot easier to keep with and also to distinguish the characters. I give this 5 stars. Now on to my July wrap up. There are 9 books for this, so let's just get on with it. The first book that I finished in July, I actually started quite a while before, but I put it down because the plot was really intricate and I just didn't have the brain capacity to carry on reading it and understanding and enjoying it as well as revising. So, but then I finished it in early July and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and that is Stork Mountain by Miroslav Pankov. I got sent this for review and I am so grateful because it was amazing. It's set in Bulgaria and about an American student coming home. So he's Bulgarian, lived in America, studied in America, and then he comes back to find his grandfather, and he learns a lot of the folklore and meets this girl and who he's not supposed to like at all because she's Muslim, he's Christian, and that's just not meant to be in this village. I loved this. It was so fascinating. There was so much going on, and it was it was a very, very detailed and in-depth plot. So I would recommend reading it when you have the time to focus on it, because obviously I found that I couldn't spend the time on it at that point, and I had to put it down because I just wasn't getting the full enjoyment of it. And I'm so glad I didn't try and make myself carry on, because the review for this would probably be very different. The writing in this is just beautiful and it blew me away. It was a 5-star read easily. The next book that I read was Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom. I really liked the setup of this, and I also really enjoyed the story, but something overall didn't grab me, and I only rated it as 3.5 stars. Now, that's not to say it wasn't a bad book, and I'm really wanting to pick up the sequel and find out what happens next. It's not as creepy as I expected it to be. Like, it is in places, but I was expecting it to be worse, and I don't deal well with creepy books at all. I'm a huge wimp. The third book that I picked up in July was Moonstone, The Boy Who Never Was by Jön? I have no clue how you say that. It's Icelandic, and this book is set in Iceland in 1918, and it's really short, and I really enjoyed this book. It's very unique, and the writing style is very different. I kind of got a bit confused at the end, I'm not gonna lie, but at the same time I still loved this book. I gave it 4 stars. It was so beautiful, and the characters were just so heartbreaking, I think is a good word to describe them. The whole situation of the main character, Manny, is just broke my heart a little bit, and it's just so sad. The next book I picked up was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas, and I finally understand the hype over Sarah J Maas's worlds and characters. This was amazing. I loved her work, and I will definitely be picking up A Court of Mist and Fury and also Throne of Glass. Fantasy is one of those genres which I say I don't like, but whenever I pick one up, I like it. And I don't know why, but never mind. I would definitely be picking up the next one to this because it was so good. I fell in love with the characters, so invested in their story. I gave it 4 stars because it's not one of my all-time favourite reads. I finally feel like I'm getting there with BookTube and the popular books on BookTube. Now I'm reading some fantasy. The next book that I picked up is absolutely huge. That is A Little Life by Hana Yanagihara. It was absolutely wonderful. The writing, the characters, everything about it just made me fall in love with this book. The characters just felt like friends, and I just fell in love with them, and I just wanted to just be there with them, and I got so invested in their stories, how they'd been interwoven, and just how much they relied on each other. And this story was beautifully written, and I cannot recommend this book enough. It's long, but it doesn't feel that long whilst you're reading it. One thing I will say though, and you probably heard this about this book, is that it will break your heart repeatedly as you read it. I felt like crying the entire way through, be it of happiness or of heartbreak. Usually heartbreak, but sometimes happiness. And it just broke me inside, this book. I had to sit back after it and just breathe and come back to reality, because it was one of those books which just takes you off. Yeah, I gave this 5 stars. Obviously it was my favourite book of the month. I just loved it. I think everybody should read it. I just do. I think everybody should read it. The 6th book that I read in July was Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. I'd been told repeatedly to pick this up, and This was such a weird read in many ways. I found myself falling in love with the writing and the story and really enjoying it, but feeling like I shouldn't be enjoying it because it's about paedophilia. It was a really weird reading experience, though I think it's a worthy one and I think everybody should read it because it was really interesting and I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. It was a weird read, but not necessarily in a bad way, in a sort of more confusing, but I'm glad I've read it and I enjoyed it, even though I feel like I shouldn't have enjoyed it, if that makes any sense whatsoever. The next book I picked up was also a ebook, and that is Broken Dolls by Tyrell. This was a really interesting read. It was about, to explain it without spoilers, it's this girl and she is kept, and she is a doll, a living doll. And the reasons for that are explained later on in the book. It's sort of a mystery and she wants to find out why, but this doctor is keeping her as a living doll in the attic. I gave it 3 stars and I enjoyed it, and I would recommend it because it's a really quick, short read and it's fun and interesting, and I really like the concept of it. It was really different and unique. The next book I read in July was One by Sarah Crossan. This made me cry. I am just saying this now, this made me cry. And I don't normally cry in books, but I did at the end of this. This is about 2 conjoined twins and they start school, and it's about what it's like to be a conjoined twin. It's written in verse, and at first I was a bit sceptical. I was like, how's this going to work? Surely it would be better in prose, but it really did work. I think it made it a bit more poignant and emotional, and I think I connected with the character better. I was surprised, but I think it was a really good choice. I gave this 4.5 stars and I really liked it. I would have liked to learn a bit more about what happened afterwards, but at the same time I thought it was so wonderful, and I'm so glad I finally got around to reading it because I've wanted to read this for ages. The final book that I read in July was Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut. I think in my last video I talked about how much I loved Kurt Vonnegut, so I'm not going to go off too much on a tangent, but his work is so good and it's so ironic. Every single character in this book is there for a reason, and it's there to sort of mock something about society and about something that people do and how ridiculous it really is, because Kurt Vonnegut is very satirical. This book is full of like cartoons and images and things like that drawn by Kurt Vonnegut. It really added to the experience, I think, because it kind of carries on with that whole degradation of humanity. He spares no prisoners, he just targets everyone. I can't put into words my love for Vonnegut's writing and his satire and irony. I can see a lot of people not liking his books because of it, but I really enjoy it and I definitely recommend them. I also love how his characters sort of come across books. Kilgore Trout in this is also in Slaughterhouse 5, and one of his other books is something about Elliot Rosewater, who also features vaguely in this. Something that comes up a lot in this book is the interconnectedness of everything, and that is definitely highlighted across his books as a whole, I can tell. And I give this 5 stars. So that's my June and July wrap up. I read quite a lot of good books actually in these 2 months. There were a couple of 3-star rates, but I still enjoyed them. If you've got any opinions on the books or any recommendations, please let me know down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!